Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So, we have just come off the back of the Starfield gameplay reveal at the Xbox Bethesda conference today, and wow. It really looks like Bethesda are going to deliver on this one. It looks absolutely incredible. Everything I could have hoped for, and a whole bunch of stuff that, frankly, I didn't dare hope for shown in that gameplay reveal. So I'm absolutely blown away. So let's take a little look at some of the cool things we've seen in it, some of the features, and get a sort of first impressions overview and have a little chat about this thing. Okay then, so yeah, Starfield has finally got its gameplay reveal, and we had a 15-minute showcase at the Bethesda Xbox showcase tonight, and yeah, it's amazing to finally see gameplay of this. We've been waiting so long for it. Bethesda said way back when that they'd be revealing it this summer, and obviously then came the dates of the showcase, and now that day has arrived, and yeah, they have delivered. It looks so cool. My reaction right the way through that 15-minute showcase was just jaw on the floor. It looks amazing. It's got so many cool things in it. It looks like it's going to be everything that we wanted from a Bethesda single-player RPG, and a whole load of things that honestly I didn't think they would do. And I'm short of words in some ways, so that's going to make this interesting, isn't it? But yeah, I'm absolutely blown away by it. So I'm going to throw some of the clips from that showcase up on the screen while we have a little chatter. We'll go over some general bits and pieces and some stuff that I've noticed, some things that I'm really impressed with, some stuff that I'm looking forward to, and we'll go into things in much more detail in subsequent videos because I need a little time to process this, which is a hell of a good sign in and of itself, in my opinion. So let's have a look at this thing. So yeah, first up we've got a gameplay section, primarily. The whole thing's a gameplay showcase, but there's a core sort of combat gameplay opening section to it, which is really cool. We've got well, I've got a host of notes here, so excuse my looking down every minute or two. But yeah, the graphics looking great. Not the greatest graphics out there at the moment, current generation, etc., etc. That's fairly standard fare for Bethesda. They do well, but they don't generally, blow the roof off what we've ever seen before. That said, it's close enough that there's no complaints to be had there. It looks absolutely sensational. I did notice the odd tiny weird perspective thing, and particularly camp builders and base builders from Bethesda's previous games, I suspect, will be aware of this sort of thing. But it's not particularly unusual in a Bethesda game to get slightly odd perspective on occasion. So I did notice a couple of moments in there where I was like, oh, okay, that's odd. But yeah, that's standard Bethesda thing. In a sense, it made me smile because it's a BGS game, and that screamed BGS to me, so I'm down for that. But overall, yeah, the graphics look really cool. The costumes, the spacesuit designs, the variety of them, the outfits, the environments look absolutely amazing. They look unique, they look varied, they look like really cool places to explore, and I cannot wait to get into that next year. So they recently said actually that they're putting the finishing touches on the game at the moment. That was something that came out earlier this week, so good signs for an earlier part of next year as opposed to June, which was sort of the end of the release window they mentioned, so that's always promising as well. So yeah, we've got to look at the UI as well. That looks, well, if you've seen the leaks before, it'll look familiar to you, sort of mostly white on the background of the game, obviously a white UI on the background of the game. With a few little bits of detail. There's an O2 meter in the corner, there's obviously ammo and health and stuff like that. It's relatively unobtrusive, it's not over the top, which is cool. Very good Bethesda fare, it looks cool. There's whole loads of other little elements that popped up here and there with scanning resources and plants and creatures and stuff like that popped up. And it definitely has a cool sci-fi vibe to it. Looks like there's going to be lots of parts to this and lots of things and mechanics that we're going to have to learn, which is about what we'd expect for a massive new IP like this, and we'll get to how massive it's going to be in a minute, because my god. But yeah, it looks like there's a lot going on there, but they've managed to keep the UI relatively clean, clear, and simple as well, for the most part. There's some bits that look a bit more complex, but that's kind of what you'd expect in the places that we're going to be looking at. But we'll get to that again in a moment. So yeah, with this first bit we got to see some of the guns. We know that section of gameplay is really early on in the game, in fact, and yeah, the character's already wandering around. I think I saw 5 different weapons maybe even, at the start of the game there that the character was carrying around on a little weapon wheel. Obviously this is sort of set up around the old controller approach, and you've got the D-pad and you select things from that, circa, say, Fallout in particular. I'm thinking back to Fallout 3 more than anything else. It sort of harks a little bit back to that. It's obviously a bit more modern styled, but that sort of vibe is in there, and that's cool. We know it works. It allows you to rack up a whole list of stuff and thumb through it nice and quickly if you're using the controller. Obviously, if you're on mouse and keyboard, it'll be on your number keys, I would imagine, but yeah, definitely a solid look there. Looks very, very cool. We saw a little bit of gunplay in there, which was fine. Bethesda are not renowned for being the greatest creators of gunplay in the world. There are people out there who are more famous for their gunplay. I'm sure you can think of a few if you stretch your brains without my throwing them at you. So, you know what the score is with Bethesda's games and gunplay, particularly with the Fallout series, but this looks different to the Fallout series. One thing I did notice is the AR-type weapon, which I think was called Grendel, which may or may not have been a case of player naming it, I don't know, but if it's either case, that was cool. But either way, that AR didn't seem to have a whole lot of recoil on it, which could be something they need to add. It could just be that's the way it is, or it could be space guns in the future. Maybe they've managed to figure out how to deal with recoil. Or perhaps it uses some kind of system to propel the ammunition that doesn't generate recoil in the same way. Who knows? But I did happen to notice it, so I thought I'd mention it. But nonetheless, combat looks reasonably solid, about what we'd expect from a Bethesda game. One of the really cool things about it, though, that I thought was really interesting and I'm really looking forward to getting to grips was movement. Obviously, we see the player with a jetpack on, doing sort of hovering in the air and shooting from a jetpack position, as well as moving around the environment. And we see some kind of fluid, fast movements of ducking sort of out of the line of fire and stuff like that. So the movement looks like it's going to be quite dynamic and really, really fun, and a lot more sort of control and ability to get the heck out of trouble and sort of use your environment compared to, say, Bethesda's previous games, which is a really, really cool upgrade. I really like the look of that. I'm really interested in that. We got a little peek at the lockpicking system as well, which is sort of a digital lockpicking thing where you've got a selection of lockpicks that you pick from and compare it to the lock that you're trying to unlock, and then you have to get them in the right place. And that looks like I mean, Bethesda doing lockpicking minigames is nothing new, but this is a very different sci-fi take on the old lockpicking minigames from previous Bethesda games. It looks like it's done well. Looks like it'll be reasonably smooth to move through, so it doesn't take you away from the rest of the game for too long, much like their previous systems. And it just looked like it was going to be pretty decent, pretty fun, and a new take, so that should be cool. So, moving on, the second part of the showcase had a bit more of a story focus. We got to look at some different environments, different worlds as well, whereas that initial gameplay section, more combat section really, had a focus on a single location, although different bits of that location, but still a single place. We got to look at a few different environments alongside hearing bits about the story, which is really cool. So we've got some fantastic, really clean, modern-looking sci-fi environments. There's Aquila City we got to take a look at, as well as New Atlantis, the capital of the United Colonies. We've got a little look at both of those and their styles. We've seen concept art of both of these before, and I've mentioned things like how Aquila City looks a little bit like Tatooine, Mos Eisley in Star Wars, and it's definitely got that vibe, but it's really got an Old West thing going on as well, kind of frontier town vibe, which we kind of knew they were going for with it, but it's really cool in the way they've done it. It's definitely got that kind of Wild West sheriff character going on in there as well. It looks really, really cool. So looking forward to that. So little hints about the story. Obviously they've avoided giving us any spoilers, so there shouldn't be any spoilers. But yeah, it looks like we're looking for artifacts, or Constellation rather, a group of space explorers that we are going to be part of, are looking for these artifacts that are scattered across the explored systems, the 100 or so different star systems that we have to explore, which is way more than I thought it was going to be. And we have to find these things and figure out what they're apparently building. And there was some massive kind of swirly ring thing that we got hinted at in this as well, that presumably is a significant plot point as well. So that looks really, really interesting. Apparently there's something about visions as well. If you look back to the original trailer that we saw last summer, a year ago now, crikey, that's flown, then there's shots inside the ship with these little bits of paper with kind of drawings of some kind of MacGuffin on them. And I was pretty convinced as soon as I saw that, I bet that's something we're looking for and it's connected to the main story and it's some kind of artifact we've got to find. And what do you know? We've got to find artifacts. So not disappointed to be right on that, but that's really cool. Looking forward to diving into the story. The characters look really cool, the character designs, the NPCs, the face modelling and sort of facial animations look a massive step up over what Bethesda have done before, which is great, definitely needed to see that. And yeah, they look really, really cool. There's a lot of customization in there that looks cool as well. So really happy to see some massive upgrades over immersion in terms of the characters and stuff, which Todd Howard says before in previous interviews is something they wanted to work on, and it looks like they really have. It's really, really cool. And we got to have a little look more at the character whose voice we heard in that original trailer. The voiceover for that old trailer last year was the thing about the Field of Stars being mapped. That character is in the game. It's an NPC. Not massively surprising, but we got to have a look at her and hear a few more lines from her as well in this, which is really cool. Definitely a very iconic, striking voice. That's going to be a performance that stands out, I think. And yeah, kudos to whoever that voice actress is, because yeah, bob on, that was. Very much impressed with that. So yeah, looking at the sort of different styles, of course, in the environments, things like that, I got vibes from loads and loads of different sci-fi properties that I've watched and played and stuff over the years as well. Obviously, unique takes on it, all very much Bethesda's own new thing, but there was also, you could see kind of tiny little bits of influence from previous things. I mentioned sort of Aquila City having that Tatooine vibe in Star Wars. There's tiny little bits of Trek in there as well, for those who are into that sort of thing. I'm willing to bet there's plenty of people on the Bethesda team who are. There was sort of the odd thing here and there that gave me little Stargate vibes as well, and I am 100% there for that. There were even things in there that gave me vibes of No Man's Sky, which, again, not hugely surprising, given that, despite No Man's Sky's shaky start, it has become one of the more successful space games of the last decade or so, so that's not surprising to see some influence there, but very, very cool nonetheless. And there was also weirdly I got Guardians of the Galaxy vibes in there at times, and some other Marvel bits and pieces in there as well, because obviously Marvel's got its whole superhero thing, but there's a little bit of sci-fi vibe in places in there, and I definitely got some of that in this gameplay reveal as well, and that was quite cool. So we got a little look at character creation, obviously just touching the surface of it there, but they basically said it was more involved and more customizable than it has ever been in any previous games, and just at a quick glance, it certainly looks like it. That looks really, really cool. I mean, one example is you can customize the way your character walks. I don't know how to interpret that exactly, but clearly your character can walk in different styles and have different kind of mannerisms in the way that they walk, and you can customize that, and that's bonkers of a thing to think of. That is brilliant. That's really cool. So if there's that level of detail, that's fantastic. Definitely down for that. Looking at some of the hairstyles and stuff, there's definitely some old school Bethesda hairstyles that have been revamped for new graphics in there. There's definitely some familiar stuff, but yeah, that's cool. And there's also some potential in there for some new stuff as well. And also the odd thing here and there that harks to other games I've seen as well. So there's some really, really cool character customization stuff in there. There was a lot more customization in terms of character outfits than I expected. I thought we'd basically have one, maybe a couple of different spacesuit styles that we might be moving between, possibly with, attach some upgrades to it to do different things. I didn't realise there'd be entire costumes, but in the showcase we saw player characters wearing a decent variety of different outfits, so that came as a real surprise to me. I didn't expect to see that, but that's very, very cool nonetheless. The more you can make your character unique, the better. That's great. We also got to look at the skill system, which basically combines Skyrim and Fallout into one new skill system, which sounds like a lot, and it kind of looks like it's gonna be. There look to be a lot of skills sort of divided into categories, and then there are a lot of skills in those categories. And then as you level up, you pick a skill, and then that skill is further ranked up by using it in a Skyrim kind of a style. If you want to upgrade your archery in Skyrim, you got to shoot that bow. And that seems to be the principle here as well. There are also challenges, apparently, that we can complete, and those will also contribute to the levelling up of your skill, which could either be annoying or it could be good. We'll have to wait and see how they actually pull that off. But I don't know, I imagine people have different feelings on that, but that's quite cool. You've got the return of character backgrounds and character traits as well, which are things we haven't seen since, at least in the traits, I think, since possibly Oblivion in terms of Bethesda's single-player games. So that's really cool. Obviously, they give you some bonuses and some penalties as well. And there's a little bit of a Wasteland vibe in some of that as well, which is quite cool. So, yeah, that's a nice thing to have back from previous Bethesda games. It's quite cool to see. We got to look at, very, very briefly, research and crafting. So that's obviously going to be a whole thing. It's not surprising. That's kind of standard in Bethesda games. It might be a smithing system in Skyrim, or it might be learning weapon mods and upgrades in Fallout. But either way, you learn to craft different gear, items, mods, possibly tools and things like that. There's a whole tech skill tree, so it's possible there's a whole tech crafting thing in there, which is cool. We also got outposts, which is really, really cool as well. So no surprises to see a base building system in Bethesda's latest single-player RPG. If you go back, I can go back as far as, in my memory easily, Oblivion, and there's been housing systems in every Bethesda game since then, BGS game, to some extent or another. So given the success of it in Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 in particular, not surprised to see the outpost system here in Starfield either. Really, really pleased to see that. Being able to build our own bases and stuff really kind of means it's going to fit well on this channel. Really happy to see that. So definitely going to be all over building outposts. Also kind of pleased that they've called it an outpost system, because I was thinking about this. I didn't discuss it, I don't think, but I was thinking, well, we've got settlements in Fallout 4, camps in 76. Neither of those really make much sense for Starfield. What might it be? Outposts, maybe? Turns out I got that one right, so kind of happy about that as well. But that's very, very cool. Base building is, well, those of you who've been around the channel for a long time will be well aware that that's really, really right up my alley, and I'm really down for this. Very excited for that. Looking forward to seeing more about it. I'm sure they'll share more details on that in the coming months, so definitely going to be on the lookout for that and looking forward to that. Related to this is another very, very cool thing that Bethesda have never done before, and we kind of knew that in the sense that Starfield is obviously going to have ships, and therefore vehicles, which Bethesda haven't really done before. You could buy a horse and maybe change its saddle in Skyrim, but that was about it. But here we have fully customizable, build-your-own spaceships. I did not dream for a minute that they were going to go to that level, and it's absolutely fantastic. I assumed we were just going to have a ship. You might be able to upgrade some superficial little bits, like the quality of your lasers or whatever on it, and that would be about it, at most. Turns out everything is modular, customizable. There's different styles of components you can put together to assemble your own ship. There are different manufacturers. You can change color schemes. It goes on, and that is a really cool surprise that I never really thought that they'd be able to cram in there, and it looks like they have. So if they pull that off as well as it seems they might well do, that will be really, really cool. And yeah, definitely down to get stuck in and playing with that. Yeah, it also includes things like choosing your crew for the ship as well, which is, again, a level of detail I wasn't really expecting. I assumed it'd basically be the player in charge of everything, and I kind of guess it will in actual fact when it comes to the gameplay aspects. But you could, presumably different crew members will give your ship different advantages. Some might manage your shields better, some might be engineers who manage your engines better, who knows. But the fact you can choose different crew members and select who comes with you, they seem to have a function, so that's quite cool as well. I'm guessing it's from the pool of companions, but maybe they're separately hireable individuals who are not regular companions, because it sounds like you're going to have hireable individuals for your outposts as well, to give them specific functions, and they'll carry out certain jobs in your outpost base. So that's quite cool as well. It sort of takes that companion system and adds a whole extra layer on the outside of it as well, which is really, really cool. Because obviously we already know there's going to be a companion system in there as well. So talking about ships, there was a lot of speculation on whether or not you're going to be able to fly your ship. There was a bit of a leak a couple of months ago now that basically said yes you were, and I didn't entirely believe it prior to that. I didn't think it was something that, given everything else that they're going to be doing, they were going to pull off. But it's in there. You can fly your ship. There is space combat in there. You point it, it goes. It's somewhat reminiscent of the ship controls in No Man's Sky. For those who've played that will be familiar. Basically, you've got the main heads-up display, which has kind of a large ring on it, and then there's a circle within there, and it looks like you move that circle and drag it around with your thumbstick or the mouse or whatever it may be, and the ship sort of follows that. In No Man's Sky, I wasn't the biggest fan of that. I personally would have liked a bit more of an Elite Dangerous style over No Man's Sky, but it's fine, it works, and I can see why they went down that road. It looks like it's done well. The heads-up display looks cool. Space combat looks fun. It can work in either first person, so you're inside the cockpit, or third person if you want to be up behind your ship. I think I'm going to be going first person just for the immersion coolness factor personally, but yeah, that looks really, really fun. And we got some shots of space combat as well, which was perhaps a little basic. You just seem to be flying around shooting lasers at other ships. Hopefully there'll be more upgrades than were shown there in terms of the weapons. I'd be very surprised if we don't get a much more deep dive into things like this in the coming months. But we'll have to see. But the fact that we can fly the ships and there's space combat is very, very cool. It looks good, to be sure. The design of it and the graphics and the ship explosions and the interactions with other ships, the way they're moving around, just look really, really nice. So that's definitely a win as well. And we get to see the ship docking with the space station as well in the footage as well. It looks really, really cool, and yeah, definitely pleased with that. It looks very much that NASA punk vibe that they're going for with Starfield. You definitely get that whole kind of ship connecting, and it makes stuff look like something we could actually have built. So there's definitely a grounded nature to it that is very, very cool, which persists through the whole game, of course, but in terms of the high-tech sci-fi stuff, it's still familiar and grounded, which I really like that vibe, personally. Very cool. So the last big thing they talked about, they showed us some really, really gorgeous planets, and they mentioned the sheer size of the game, and I said I was going to jump back into this. Obviously, I mentioned briefly the UI and the amount of detail and stuff in that, and the size of that. Obviously, the skill tree as well is trees, really, plural, because there's a lot in there. Then over 100 star systems and over 1,000 planets, the entirety of which can be explored. Not just small open world zones, circa some games that have come out in the last few years, whole planets. Closer to No Man's Sky, I'm guessing they won't be quite as big, and it's not procedurally generated, I don't believe. It's not usually the way Bethesda go, and I can't see it being the case in this. But over 1,000 planets to explore? I wouldn't have dreamed that. I was thinking we were going to get more like sub-10 star systems and you can land on most of the planets in them. I didn't think we were going to get 100 star systems and 1,000 planets plus. That's incredible. The idea obviously is that whole Skyrim thing of you go out, you explore, you find adventures to get into. And it worked very, very well in Skyrim, and logically it should work very well in this sort of setting as well. The only one tiny fear I have is 1,000 planets is a lot of planets. And how big they can really make those planets and how much stuff they can put into them, you gotta wonder just how far they can push that. So we'll see what the actual reality of that is. I don't think it's going to be like trying to walk all the way around planet Earth at the speed of your character. I assume it's going to feel smaller than that. But nonetheless, that sounds even so to be absolutely humongous, and it sounds like we're going to get a long lifespan out of this. We kind of know from what Todd Howard's been hinting at for ages that the fact that Skyrim has been around and is still being played regularly and people are still finding new stuff to do 10 years later is something they want to try and capture for future games. Starfield, the next Elder Scrolls game, and that comes out and so on. And clearly they are going for it with this in just the sheer scale. So that is absolutely magnificent. And you guys will have seen some of the footage I've thrown up now as well, and it looks absolutely incredible. And I cannot believe it. I'm so down for this. So yeah, really, really excited. That's my first impressions, first thoughts, the things that caught my eye, my first look through this showcase. We'll try and have a bit more of a deep dive and go through each of the 3 sections in it in more detail in separate videos. But yeah, I am absolutely hyped as hell for this, and it's Bethesda doing sci-fi, which is 2 things I absolutely love to bits, put together. Could not be happier. It looks like they've done such an amazing job on it, and yeah, I'm a little impatient for it, but I think it's going to be well worth it. It looks like it's going to be so much fun and so much to explore, so much to do, and so many bases to build, and I cannot wait for this. Really, really excited. As I say, everything I was hoping for we saw there, and a whole bunch of stuff I didn't dare dream of either. So, fantastic work from Bethesda, and I'm really looking forward to seeing just how it pans out when we actually get our hands on it. And yeah, if it comes even close to the potential, I will be a very happy chap. So, love to hear what your initial reactions and stuff to all this footage are down below. Do let me know in the comments. Really appreciate that. Let me know what you think, if you're as excited as I am and what things caught your eye. As I say, we'll go over the bits and pieces in a bit more detail in coming videos in the next few days. So do watch out for those, notification bell and all that. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider dropping likes and subs. I very, very much appreciate it. Down below the video you can find social media links, merch store and channel memberships as well if you're interested in supporting the channel that way, alongside a few other buttons as well. If you're interested in hitting those, it massively, massively helps out. So please do give that a thought. I very, very much appreciate it. And if you get the chance, do join us for live streams as well. In the meantime, we're currently playing Fallout 76. Of course, we've got a new season starting in a couple of days. And of course, we're playing Mass Effect at the moment. We've got a whole load of other stuff lined up for the coming months between now and Starfield, which is obviously going to be a massive thing on the channel when that finally drops next year. But for now, massive thank you very much for watching. I do hope you guys are as excited for this as I am. And I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.